I'm joined now by Federiga Bindi. She's a senior fellow at the Center for Transatlantic Relations at Johns Hopkins University. Why don't we start where Michael ended, these peace talks. What can the summit do in terms of helping speed those along, in a sense?
Well, speed, it's, I would say, to warm up, because of course nobody expected the result of the referendum. So, I mean, they can push if there is a strong support, which we will be, for restarting the negotiation and finding a solution, they can sort of warm up the situation in Colombia. I mean, this will be definitely the #1 issue at the summit.
And the #2 issue, Venezuela, you believe?
Well, officially #2 issue probably will be the launch of this student exchange scheme on the model of European Erasmus. But certainly the Venezuela issue, it's a big one, whether we will decide to suspend Venezuela from the organization or not.
You and I were just chatting, and the themes, many of them decided long before this referendum vote, before we started to see the volatility in Venezuela. But Juan Manuel Santos was interviewed about the summit, and he said Latin America in general is competing against other regions of the world on the subject of education, the issue of youth, and entrepreneurship. He's right, of course. Which one do you think is more important that Latin America focus on in terms of riding the course, in a sense?
They're all important. I mean, entrepreneurship is probably the most important one, but the general idea is that we need to give young people hope. I mean, young people seems to have it very hard everywhere in the world, even in Latin America, and they don't see perspective for them. So this is why the decision was to focus on young people. But certainly economic growth is becoming an issue in Latin America as well. So entrepreneurship should be the #1. But the idea is also to work on culture. Culture also is economic pivot, not only culture is history. So because culture can be tourism, culture can give economic growth as well.
And on the education front, Santos said he wants his country to be the most educated nation in Latin America by 2025. It's an ambitious goal. I imagine every country wants their country to jump ahead of the others. Where do we stand in the landscape when it comes to Latin American education?
Well, Latin American education, it's fairly good. You know, a sort of a mix between some of European education, some of American education. So I don't think they're really lagging behind. Probably what has to change is a culture. You're probably an entrepreneurship culture, an independence culture, you know, nurturing young people to take their destiny in their own hands. This is probably where there's still some work to do.
And one final question. Santos also said something I think both of us can agree on. He said there are generally so many summits that they have lost their strength, which is why, for example, we decided to not organize one every year, but one every 2 years. Is there high expectations going into this? This is just a few days for these leaders to come together, kind of hash out these huge issues. Can we expect much after a short summit like this?
Well, you know, summit bring leaders together. They make them talk to one. They sort of energize them as well. We have the same thing. It's tough to be a leader, so summits make them feel that, you know, oh, finally I'm meeting with someone who can understand my problems. So they can be energizing for them. And also cooperation always help. In this particular moment, it's good that Latin America and part of Europe comes together because, you know, there is Spain and Portugal. Unfortunately, we have the problem with Spain that, you know, it's only represented basically by the king because the prime minister, it's hopefully going to be voted on Saturday. But I see also Portugal coming in with some renewed leadership. And one of the interesting things is that Antonio Guterres, the new Secretary General of the United Nations, will be doing his first public appearance after being named Secretary General of the UN at this summit.
Are you optimistic, briefly, if you can? You think much will come out of this?
I mean, much is difficult, but I am optimistic that especially, I really think Guterres will be a very good Secretary General, and you already said that he's going to push on the Colombia peace deal. We really need that peace deal to go through, and yeah, I'm optimistic that this summit can relaunch that.
All right, Federiga, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.